Hi, everyone. My name is Paulo Batista, Regional Impact Officer for Latam. Happy to be here for another Impact series of YPO, interviewing an amazing YPOer from Costa Rica, Luis Javier Castro, one of those larger than the world people that build amazing things. I will let him tell his story, but it's definitely another great example of a YPO that has really changed and produced long-lasting impact, and still has a lot to contribute, and will tell us about his most recent endeavors with Alejandria, which is, the way I understand it, kind of the evolution of his work and his legacy, and maybe a personal discovery by Luis that impact investing and impact-oriented businesses can really have a massive impact in the world. So, Luis, please, thank you for being here with me. And I will ask you to please start just telling everyone your amazing story and your life story, and how you kind of built everything that you built.
Thank you, Paulo. You are very generous with your words. I joined YPO first. Very happy to be here with this community of YPOers today. I joined YPO back in '99. I was 32, and I had just started my own company called Mesoamerica. I still run Mesoamerica. I also run another company called Alejandria that we're going to talk about it later. But it was, for me, joining YPO was very important. I just want to start with that. I've been a YPO since '99, and when I joined, I was not sure what I was joining, but it really helped me change my persona. I mean, I was a young entrepreneur with relative success at that young age, but I really needed a group of people that could help me evolve as a person, and evolve as a member of society, and evolve as a parent and as a husband, and I'll be ever grateful to YPO for that, because this is a great community for that. If someone wants to evolve, I mean, you can really get a lot from the organization if you put yourself to it. And so I wanted to start with that. Moving to my story, I am Costa Rican. I was born in Costa Rica, from a Costa Rican family, so very Costa Rican. And my family was at that time sort of a, relatively speaking, for the Costa Rican society, a prominent family. So I was born with a lot of access to different things. But then at the same time, I was a kid that was highly bullied. I was not good at soccer, and I was very short and a little bit fat, and asked a lot of questions. So I had, like, I think, all the numbers for the lottery of bullying. So I was subject of a lot of bullying when I was at school, and that to me created a situation in which I was, I think, seeing the world in a different way, but at the same time with a lot of fear. And I had the privilege, when I was like probably 15 or 16, I had two uncles that were very important to me, and I want to go all the way back to that, because I think it is important to understand what mentors can mean to you in your life. So I have these two uncles, one from each side. One of them had gone to fight at World War II as a volunteer when he was 19. Or he was from Costa Rica, so he was a volunteer in the American Army, and he was in the occupation of Okinawa in Japan. And he was this person that was like a figure of the hero that fought the war, the big war, that was like all for justice and freedom. Those were his two main factors that moved him. And my other uncle was quite the opposite. He was a descendant of German migrants to Costa Rica. highly entrepreneurial, a view of the world. He was super creative. If you can dream it, it can happen, type of mentality. And they took me probably at the request of my parents, I suppose, because I was going through a very difficult time. And they became my two mentors. And to me, that was very important because they made me believe in me first. And also they introduced these concepts of justice, liberty, and creativity.
Amazing. I connect a lot with that. Thanks for sharing that, because I somehow have a similar story. I was saved by mentors, and I totally agree that mentors are the most important thing that you can offer a young person. So yeah, I totally identify with that.
So thanks. I think they are already dead, but I am always thankful for that. And through life, I think I found very important mentors, and I'm going to mention them through the story.
Do you mentor young people now? Do you?
And I love mentoring.
Okay.
I love mentoring. I mentor a lot of people. Mentoring and mentorship, and it's interesting that we took this road. To me, it's a two-way street. Normally, people come to me because they want mentorship, and I end up being mentored by those people a lot. It tends to be a two-way street, and when you're able to connect at a very high energy level, in which you're there to serve the other, I think it is an amazing tool. I think in YPO we should do more of that. I think forum somehow could be seen as that, but it is not exactly mentoring. But these concepts of mentorship with YNGers or among ourselves, I think.
Yes.
I think
in Brazil we have
something that we do more, but it has to be spontaneous. That's the difficulty. I mean, but that's another.
That's another topic. But in Brazil we have a massive mentoring program that I was privileged to be an officer. It was created by Richard Barzinski, who's original chair. It has like 100 pairs of YPOers mentoring each other, and it's exactly what you said. It's a two-way street, and it's a very high value program. But let's go back to your story. Let's go back to your journey.
Thank you. So I went to school in the States. I studied agribusiness first in Texas A&M. And then when I came back, I started working with my family. It was like a sure thing. It was a big corporation.
Why did you come back? What was like always the plan to come back to Costa Rica? Because some Latinos go and never come back. So why did you come back?
At that point in time, and maybe Costa Rica is a little bit different from the rest of Latam. Costa Rica has been like a very stable, democratic, a little bit provincial even, looking inwards type of country, peaceful. So it was never in my agenda not to come back. I mean, okay. it was, and then also I was coming back to a very important family business that I was going to be part of, and I came back for that. Very interesting. I started working very close to the uncle that was like the entrepreneurial guy. Very close to him. He took me under his wing and showed me his ways, and very interesting guy, very polymath type of person. Like very Renaissance man, I guess. Very into the arts.
This is the German uncle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Very into the arts, into music, into conservation at that point in time. But at the same time, the founder of the stock market of Costa Rica, founder of banks, very big in the car industry. So very interesting fellow. So I was under his wing, but he was so creative. I mean, he got the first franchise of McDonald's outside of the US back in '69.
Wow.
And think stories like that. But he was such a creative force and very strong character, and these growth possibilities that he overextended. And when the company went into Chapter 11, being probably the second largest company in the country, went into Chapter 11. And I tell this story because for me, maybe
What was
I
the
had
name of the company? What was the name of the group?
Lackner and Science.
Lackner and Sons. Okay. And
This
this
the
was
two,
the 90s, right? When you came, when it went to
when I
chapter.
came back in the 90s, yes.
Yeah.
And I tell this story because sometimes you feel like the owner of the world and you feel free and everything, but you always know that you have like a safety net. I mean, if you have a safety net, it is maybe easier for you to feel like that. But at the same time, that safety net could be an anchor. And to me, I think that I've learned that maybe things that happen to you, at some point in time, you see them as the worst thing that happened to you. But when you see that, you see them as at a distance, probably it was the best thing that happened to you. Yes. And this thing was a big shock for everyone. It was very, very, very traumatic for the whole family, for my mother and my father. My mother is the sister of this uncle. And I decided to go to my MBA, but my family couldn't afford it, so I had to apply to a scholarship. I won the scholarship from the US government, and then when they saw my name, they didn't want to give it to me because they thought that I could afford it. So I had to prove that I couldn't afford it. I got married, and I've been happily married since then, since 92. So I went to my MBA at Georgetown. Amazing time, amazing story with my wife, starting a new life, but also understanding that my future was now open for me to discover, and open for me to realize that I had to build it on my own. So I came back and I started working with Bain & Company. I found another mentor, an amazing person called Harry Strachan. He's very well known in Latam. He's an icon in the Bain history because he one of the Bain & Company first partners. He helped Mitt Romney raise the Bain capital back in '84. He negotiated with Bill Bain his exit. So he's a big icon. Oddly, I mean, he's American, but he was born in Costa Rica. So
really?
His parents were missionaries that came to Costa Rica, and they built lots of hospitals and orphanages. American missionaries, very interesting family. And Harry is an amazing person. And he wanted to come back to the region, and he started Bain Latam, based in Costa Rica. And when I met him, after graduation, I wanted to pick his brain and ask him for mentorship. I didn't know him, but I knew of him. And I went to this mentorship session, and he mentioned to me what he was doing, and we exchanged notes. And I remember that I told him that I hated consultants, that I didn't want to be a consultant. And he was a consultant. So it was a very, very, very interesting conversation, very nice. He's an amazing person. And then I left the room after the mentorship. And when I got home, I had a call from him, and he made me an offer to work for him under his wing to learn. And he said, I know you told me that you hate consulting, not consultants. But I think it is very important for people to have that base of strategy if you want to be successful. And I have this dream, he told me, of someday bringing the private equity concept of Bain Capital to the region. And I believe that you have a nice profile. And I said, well, thanks. And I started working with him. I worked with Bain for a couple of years. And then in '96, we started Mesoamerica. And Mesoamerica was started under three premises. It was back in '96.
Sorry, Luis, but why was it started as Mesoamerica and not Bain Capital Central America or some Bain Capital?
Bain was not interested in Latam at that time in terms of Bain Capital. I mean, they just started the Bain & Company consulting firm. It was the '90s. I mean, remember that private equity started in the '80s. Yeah. Bain Capital started in '84. I mean, the US and Europe they were just in the US. Actually, Europe started some years later in terms of private equity. So Mesoamerica was actually one of the first, if not the first, private equity groups in Latam.
Was Bain an investor in Mesoamerica or not at all?
Yeah, Yes,
Oh,
we had the GPs of Bain. We had Mitt Romney as investors. We had
okay.
Steve Pagliuk as investor. Um, 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 we had Tom Tierney, which is now the icon in impact consulting.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody has heard of Tom. Was one of our GPs. Um, so it was an interesting time because basically what we did was create this fund, mimicking Bain Capital. I spent like 18 months working with Bain and Company, and then 6 months in Boston working with Meet and the team, learning the Bain Capital concept. They wanted to help us. We saw ourselves as sister organizations, but it was a separate entity. And I was the first managing director. Harry remained at Bain and Company, and I was the managing director. But I was a little bit of a rebel. The fund was a small fund with local Central American families and these GPs from Bain. And we started looking at, we started the company under three premises. I was telling that. The first one was, and this was a lot from Harry, is let's call everything we do an experiment. If you set yourself to experimenting, you are open to a growth, what we call now a growth mindset. Mm-hmm. You can try to do something, and if it doesn't work, you can change it and evolve. So we started with that principle. The second principle was, let's try to create such an important force in terms of what we want to do in the region, that we should attract the best talent. And I think it is very important, if you want to be successful, to always believe and feel the dumbest guy in the room. I mean, if you are surrounded by people that are much smarter than you, the possibility of doing things better improves significantly. So this concept of always feeling that you are the best or the highest or the greatest is more a deterrent than a force for change. So the second concept was that let's try to attract the best possible talent. And the third one was, we can do great by doing good. So this we even from the beginning we started with those concepts. So very early on.
That was probably one of the first times that somebody created a private equity firm under that principle, right? I mean, of doing great by doing good. I mean, we're talking about the '90s, so that's awesome.
Very different.
Did you get pushback? Did you get pushback on that idea?
Most of our investors were large families from Central America. Central America had gone through a war, a very difficult time. So out of adversity, maybe they thought that it was very creative and very interesting, but it was like, let's wait and see. Yeah. At the beginning, the problem was more how to create a culture, and I am becoming a very strong supporter of cultural change in companies. And internally, most of the people we attracted were these investment bankers and people that wanted to eat the world, and for them, it was like, okay, let's do that, but we need to focus mainly in profits. So we at the beginning, we created a foundation, and we said 5% of our profits are going to go to the foundation, and with that 5%, we're going to do all the good. So it was highly philanthropic. Okay. It was highly philanthropic, and then the journey began. I started spending around at the beginning probably 25% of my time at the foundation and 75% at Meso. I didn't like the fund structure. It was very rigid. So I said, what is the problem? We've seen 150 deals. We haven't done one. Everything seems to me too small. I really want to change the world. And then I said, I'm going to be a game changer here. And I said, in what industries can we really make a big difference? What is going on in the world that we can make a big difference? And the fund was a $20 million fund. It was a very small fund. And I said, I think after the war, people were carrying a rifle before the war. And now we have all these people and we need to do something with all these people. We have to get into a wave of things that could give them a tool or something different. As we started looking at different industries, and telecom was going through a big transformation, because governments were selling the telephone companies. At the same time, because of this selling of the telephone companies, they were opening for competition, and at the same time, the cellular technology was arriving. So yes. It was a very interesting point in time, and I think I shifted somehow from being a fund manager to being what we call today an entrepreneur of the tech era, because what we designed with my team was a new company, as a startup actually, that was going to be a regional cellular operator, mm-hmm. with the idea of putting a tool in the hand of every Central American, yeah. Versus a rifle. And we started Mesoamerica Telecom. Very interesting. We were able to move from a $20 million fund to a $1 billion endeavor in 2 years. In '98, we started Mesoamerica Telecom. We became the partners of Telefónica of Spain. They invested 50% of the capital, and we raised the other 50% of the capital with our Central American families. And we were also able to raise an important amount of debt, the largest syndicated loan at the time in Central America, to build this new company. Mm-hmm. To me, that changed our landscape completely, because we knew that we were able to, if you had a great idea, if you understand a big problem, I'm going to talk a lot about this. I mean, I think it's very important to work around huge problems, and you design a solution that could solve that problem. Money comes. Money is not the scarce resource. Having and design good solutions for big problems, that's the scarce part of the equation. So that to us changed a lot. So from there, it changes the whole landscape of Mesoamerica. We did that business with Telefónica. Then I got hooked with this idea of creating big companies to solve big problems. And in 2001, we bought the first wind farm that was built in Latin America. It was a 20 mega farm that was built in '96. But these Californians that came to Costa Rica, and we bought the small farm of 20 megs, mainly because of the team, but also because back in 2001 we said the world can take fossil fuels, and we need to start renewables. Now it is mainstream. But in 2001 it was the first wind farm in the region, and we started this company called Meso Energy, and after 19 years, we became the largest renewable operator in Central America and the second largest in Mexico, with 1.3 gigas of wind and solar energy. Very interesting story, with very interesting ways of interacting with farmers that own the land, and they became title. We gave title to their land, and they became partners in the business by us giving them 3% of the sales of the energy projects to the farmers that own the land. Very interesting ways of interacting with them. So that was the Mesoamerica story in terms of private equity. We did telecom, energy, fiber to the home, mainly infrastructure. But parallel to that, the foundation. And I was dedicating first 25% to the foundation. And at the foundation, what I did is I need to learn what is the role of the private sector in society. And a friend of mine invited me to be part of this alliance that was recently founded by this amazing guy called Walter Kisling Sr. He was the president of INCA, a very important university in Central America. one of the first CEOs in Latam for a Fortune 500. He was the CEO of H.B. Fuller, and he started this alliance of the private sector for development. But he died, sadly enough, 2 years after he founded the alliance. And the daughter of this guy invited me to be part of the board, and I became the president of that alliance. And I was president of that alliance for probably 12 years. And the idea of that alliance of the private sector for development was to really understand what is the role of the private sector in society. We have 140 companies in Costa Rica and around 700 companies in Central America. And to me, that was an amazing space to learn. And I'm going to come back because this daughter of Walter, her name is Alexandra Kisling. I have an amazing friend. He came to me to offer me to join the alliance and to help her move the alliance to the dream her father had. And she said, listen, I mean, we spoke about this, about the alliance for like 20 minutes. And I said, yes, I want to join. I want to be part of it. But then the other 3 hours, she was basically telling me how successful I had been in terms of attracting Telefonica and launching this billion-dollar idea as an entrepreneur. And I was at that time maybe 32, 33. For Central America at that time, $1 billion deal with Telefonica Cellular was huge. So I became like an entrepreneurial rock star. I mean, in terms of being in the front of magazines, that hype of what we see with entrepreneurs today. But she said, congratulations for that. But I know you since you were a little kid, and I'm seeing that you're losing your essence. Because I was.
Why? What did she mean with that? What did she mean with that?
I was always very sensitive and very like into helping others, and this limelight was producing, I guess, a lot of ego.
Yeah.
And I had this like that time this like huge ego moving me. Now that I look backwards, maybe it was a little bit of revenge, in the bankruptcy of my family, the bullying when I was a kid. But then she invited me to start meditating, and I got into that practice. I started meditating. I started doing Qigong. I do Qigong every day. I strongly believe that it is very important for anyone, and especially now where things moving so fast, to find that space in which you find presence, and you really understand the here and now, and you can really be good with yourself and understand what is your position of that conscious or self in this world and in this life. And that helped me a lot. I always mention her because I see her as one of the mentors also, inviting me to that world. And I discovered this place called the Blue Mountain in Costa Rica. It's a retreat space that they teach Qigong. And I always tell the guy, the seafood there, Seafood Rama, that saved my life in a sense, because you can, when you have early success and things that are big, I think, relative to you, I don't mean to brag. I mean, I hope anyone sees this as bragging, but you can take two roads: this road of ego, inflating yourself, or you can say, why was I blessed with this, and what can I do with this?
Yes.
Because you are a very, very small accident in time and space. But you being that small accident, what are you here for? Yes. So I think
do you believe in kind of a destiny side of it, of kind of a purpose, and do you say why in that sense?
I believe a lot in purpose, but I am very, and I've become very spiritual. I was very religious first because I came from a very religious family, and I have shifted from very religious to very spiritual. Mm-hmm. In fact, my spiritual guide died 2 days ago. I went to a priest school, and he was the head of the school. Amazing guy, a philosopher. He was kicked out of Nicaragua because he was helping the guerrilla against Somoza back in the 70s. So he was kicked out, very into philosophical, theological, but not Catholic, even though he was the head of a Catholic school. So he was this force that also influenced me a lot. He died 2 days ago. And it was very interesting to see the full community of students after so many years talking about how an important influence he was in our lives. But going back to your question, I believe that we are part of something much bigger. I believe that there's a super big conscious that we are part of, and we are here to experiment duality, pain, this sort of like life, and we have to do the best out of it and learn a lot and give a lot.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. And in terms of purpose, I don't think it is more like, I don't know if it's destiny, because I strongly believe in your free will and you choose what you can do. That's what we're here to choose what we can do in this experience. And I strongly believe that we are, and I'm jumping ahead because that's part of what Alejandría is about. I strongly believe in. I went through. Let me put your question in pause because I went through different ways of understanding our role as business people. We started with very philanthropic things. Then we moved to corporate social responsibility. Then we moved to sustainability. And more recently, I've been very involved in this concept of conscious capitalism. And I like conscious capitalism a lot because, number one, it gives back to capitalism the concept of you can be a force for good. Why is that? It's because it can combine capital, it can combine talent in the best possible way. It can attract talent, bring capital, think about a creative way to combine those two things to do something. And if that something is big enough and the solution is good enough, then it is going to be profitable. And if it is not, then it fails. So somehow,
I sorry to interrupt you, but I love what you just mentioned. I just want to highlight it because people ask me a lot to what I do. Is why make it a for-profit, right? And I think for me, it's the last thing that you said. I think that test of profitability is something that NGOs and nonprofit entities never have to go through, and that makes them kind of endless budgets. In a way, of course, they have to fundraise a lot, and that also distracts them. But I think that that litmus test of capitalism, of having a customer that is willingly paying for that because he wants that solution, and not as a philanthropic drive, is the key for me of impact businesses in general.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, the fact that it is sustainable, that it continues to exist, and is profitable, is somehow a measure of impact. I mean, it's not the only measure of impact, but it is a measure of impact because it continues to be a desirable space in the world. Not the only measure of impact. So I also like a lot and embrace the concept of conscious capital. Sorry, you were going to ask something.
No, please finish.
The concept of conscious capitalism, because it doesn't only recognizes capitalism as an important force, but it says it is not any type of capitalism. And now that you mention NGOs, I am seeing a big continuum. You have like on this side, like ruthless capitalists, and we can talk about them or not, but ruthless capitalists. And then on this side, maybe governments, I guess. And then on this side, you are evolving from ruthless capitalists to people that are doing more philanthropic stuff after they made all the money as the barons of the 19th century, and the philanthropy of the US and Britain was born because of that. The Carnegies, etc., that they did terrible things, but at the same time
killed thousands of people and then build a theater and clean your name.
They did amazing things, but it was the conscious evolution of the time. I think it is very hard to judge them. It is just the reality of the time. And for them, they felt that we made all this money. Maybe the things that I did were not right for the times. I mean, they were even around when slavery was so accepted. But somehow they felt that they needed to give back, and philanthropy was born. So I think we need to see them with that compassion and with that understanding. But then it evolved from that to more like CSR, I guess. We need to be responsible, but the narrative was responsibility. Because I have it, I need to be responsible. Then sustainability, which I like a lot. And none of these three are mutually exclusive with conscious capitalism. I mean, they can be part of. But sustainability with this whole concept of triple bottom line and incorporating the environment and the social aspect, very important. But again, the narrative was, if I don't do it, I die. With conscious capitalism, what I like a lot is the second component. Not only, I mean, the first one, capitalism is good. The second one is interdependence. And to me, that word is very important, is to move from a world that was perceived as a machine, that was mechanic, that was complicated, and that we needed to simplify. That was the world of the Industrial Revolution, to a world that is complex, systemic, and interdependent. And that understanding, with at the end of the day, is the conscious part of conscious capitalism. That understanding that we live in a systemic world. And to me, the pandemic was this realization that we are really systemic and that we are really interconnected. I mean, having a problem like the pandemic that was for everyone at the same time, everyone, and with such dramatic consequences, to me was a very important learning. I mean, it was painful, of course, and it gave us lots of fear, and we had problems in all the companies that we owned, and it was scary because also we were facing death. We had lots of people that died around us. But at the same time, I think it was a blessing in terms of us understanding systems thinking, system interdependence, and that. And in conscious capitalism, what they say about purpose, that brings me back to your question about destiny or purpose and all that. And they call it purpose. And to me, purpose, you can define it as something very eloquent, very spiritual, and very abstract. To me, purpose is very tangible, has to be very tangible. And purpose to me is identify what is the huge problem you want to solve. That is purpose. And you design a solution putting people and planets first. If you do that, you are going to have lots of impact and you're going to be highly profitable.
And that's perfect. And I think you're mentioning, right, the evolution from responsibility, sustainability, and maybe now to opportunity, right? That understanding that it's not about license to operate only, or to, and those are still valid pillars, but it's now beyond that. It's an opportunity to build greater businesses with more impact, solve real problems, create the new telcos, and the new huge businesses will be the ones that are solving problems, environmental and social problems, because that's the new challenge of the world, right?
Absolutely. And that brings me to the second pillar. I mean, conscious capitalism was something very big for me. And that I started like learning from this alliance, etc., back in 2016. So conscious capitalism has been that force that I am embracing. And the other one is exponentiality, is understanding that we're living in exponential times. I think that's very important. I tell this story because I like it a lot. It's so important for me. It's called Quadrant 32. If you allow me, I'm going to tell the stories. It takes probably 2, 3, 4 minutes, but it's this story about the guy that went to the Maraha in India. The Maraha called him because he had invented chess, the chess game. And the Maraha says, "You're a genius. What do you want me to give you? I am so impressed with you." And he says, "I want you to put 1 grain of rice in quadrant 1, 2 in the number 2, 4 in number 3, 8 in number 4, and let's duplicate the amount of rice. And I want you to give me the amount of rice in quadrant 64. That is the quadrants of the chess board." And the Maraha says, "I thought that you were much smarter. I was going to give you a palace. I was going to give you maybe even a province of India. And you asked me for just
Rice.
like grains of rice." And he said, "Okay, let's go ahead and do it." Paula, how many grains of rice do you think there are in quadrant 64?
Probably millions and millions and
Millions. You say millions and millions. Actually, it is the amount of rice of 7 planets Earth through the history of the existence of rice.
Wow.
That is the power of exponentiality. But the important thing that is always that is used to explain exponentiality, and that is not the force of quadrant 32. The force of quadrant 32 says that the Maraha was not stupid. You were not stupid. I also said millions as you did. But the brain can capture the amounts from quadrant 1 to around quadrant 32. You could see 1, 2, 4, 8, 30, 16, 32, and you can say millions of rice in quadrant 32. From quadrant 32 onwards, the amounts are so huge that the human brain cannot digest those figures, okay? And that to me had a very spiritual thing for me, because if it doesn't fit in the brain, where does it fit?
Yeah.
Okay. Where does it fit if it doesn't fit in the brain? And the interesting thing about quadrant 32 is that experts like Singularity University, which dedicates itself to these concepts, they believe that our generation is living in quadrant 32. And what does that mean as a generation? I mean, if you look backwards, you have the exponential line starts like this and then goes like that, okay? So if you're in quadrant 32, you're in this inflection point that when you look backwards, you're going to see things almost as a line because it is very flat.
Yeah.
So when we look backwards, we can explain everything. Everything is predictable because things evolved in a certain way. And you can go back to the year 1000, and then in 500 years, it duplicated knowledge. Then from the Renaissance to the 1700s, it duplicated again. But if you're in quadrant 32 and if you're in this inflection point, and instead of looking backwards, you look forward, you're going to see this.
It's
wall.
quite scary. Yeah.
And it is quite scary. And if we are living as a generation in quadrant 32, I strongly believe that is a big privilege. It's an honor to be the generation that is alive in quadrant 32. Because if you're alive in quadrant 40, it's different. Everything is evolved and everything is changed and everything is solved through technology. But we're living in this transition.
Yeah.
This transition that is extremely important to understand, because we are moving in this transition from a paradigm of scarcity, in which we believe that resources are finite and we have to fight for them, we have to compete for them. Everything is a zero-sum game. And that is understandable, because if the resources are finite, you need to have them because maybe in the future you're going to need them. And if you don't have them, you may die. So this whole concept of fear around resources being finite and not having them has created this very, very ingrained concept of fear, accumulation, competition, and fight for those resources. But if you are, the future is not going to be like that. The future and technology has proven, and I can give you a couple of examples, that those resources can expand.
Yeah.
If you put technology.
It's the whole abundance theory, right?
And that moves you to this abundance theory that the more cooperation there is, the fastest the pie expands.
Yeah.
Internet is a good example. The Department of Defense had the possibility to have internet as their own tool, and they could have been extremely powerful and successful with that. But they decided to have internet as an open source. The same with GPS. Yeah. And the fact that internet was open source and GPS was open source has created most of the
amazing things
that we have today. Another good example is oil. You had oil as a very finite resource that people were fighting for, because you could translate oil into energy, and energy into things that you can transform. But if you could have solar panels and a powerful and cheap enough battery with the solar energy of 1 week, you could power the world for 1 year. Yeah. And energy could become abundant. So it's this whole concept of things reaching a zero marginal cost. Yeah. So if we live in these exponential times, and we live in quadrant 32, that to me, and also you believe in conscious capitalism, that to me, those two things were so important that I decided I cannot continue doing things in a traditional way. If we are alive and we're blessed to have access to resources, capital, talent, there's no time to do traditional things. We are also in a point in time in which we have three very, very important challenges. I mean, huge challenges. I mean, climate change is a huge challenge. Biodiversity reduction is a huge challenge. And inequity is a huge challenge. And if you're alive in quadrant 32, I almost believe you're a guardian of humanity. We are guardians of humanity. We need to see ourselves as that generation, that we can be the sixth mass extinction. The planet is going to be there. Another species is going to be born. Yeah. But humanity may disappear if we don't manage this transition the right way, and if we are not bold enough to speak to power, to change things, and to move in the right direction. So because of that, Mesoamerica, I founded a new company called Alejandría. And Alejandría embraces the two concepts of conscious capitalism and exponentiality. And the purpose of Alejandría is to build an educated, connected, and empowered society. Okay. And we invest in those three pillars: education, connection, and empowerment. We've done 10 investments so far since 2020.
Give us examples. Where are you investing in education, in connection, and tell us maybe a few of those 10 investments.
Yeah, we've done 10 investments. In education, we have two types of investments. One type is EdTech. So we have invested in a Canadian company, for example, that is embracing technology to introduce formative assessment in the classroom with technology in order for people to really to help teachers teach math. Knowledge strongly believes the purpose of knowledge is to motivate and to inspire the problem solvers of tomorrow. And if we are in these exponential times that you don't know math, it is like not knowing how to read and write in the 20th century. So we are unlocking the power of the new language in exponential times. We've just sold to Ontario the solution and the whole province. It is a company that is affecting close to 1.5 million students, close to 50,000 classes. A very interesting company that is going to be soon maybe a unicorn, ready to be a unicorn. And we invested globally, but we also have the solution to be introduced to Latam. So we are translating the solution to Portuguese and Spanish and adapting the curriculum to all the countries and bringing that solution. We also invested in Singularity University Latam. So we sponsored the summits. We are creating a fund for biotech with Singularity. some biotech solutions. So that's, and we also brought to Latin America the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design, because we strongly believe that we need to change the design mindset of the region if we want to really insert ourselves in this quadrant 32 and this exponential world. So that's EdTech. We also have some EdTech, that's education, sorry. We also have some another EdTech solutions that are local solutions for that. We are sponsoring an amazing guy from Colombia that is creating this AI solution to help teachers and students build classes and tests to prove themselves, for the teachers to give the class and for the students to study. And he just won an interesting prize at Silicon Valley, and he has close to 60,000 teachers using the platform, and close to 600,000 students using the platform. In Connection, we have two. Connection is harder to explain. We want to connect people. So we just invested in a company from Argentina called Fibrazo. And the idea is to bring fiber to the homes of the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay.
We have already connected 4,000 people from the poorest neighborhoods in Argentina, and we're bringing that to the rest of the town using neutral networks, but being very cognizant of understanding what do those people in those neighborhoods need, and providing the right service and the right pricing and the right type of no contracts, for example, no proof of residence, because people cannot prove where they live. Very, very aggressive type of ways. But if we can connect to the fiber optic, the bottom of the pyramid,
makes a lot of difference.
We give access to them to the quadrant 32 possibilities. Otherwise, they won't be able to, and inequity is going to be huge. And also, we have invested in a company in the Internet of Things space, because we also believe that by connecting us to things, we're going to have lots of information in order to solve issues of water, gas, energy, efficiency, etc. And the empowerment part, we invested in a company called Polymath in Colombia, and that company is a company builder, and it creates platforms to help the middle class empower themselves and be able to compete. So we have a company called Elena's that is providing a service to close to 120,000 ladies. So it's like a mix of when Amazon makes Avon or catalog selling, and with technology, it helps all these ladies get a much better salary. We also have a company called Auto Labs that is basically empowering informal mechanical garages. So these guys make like minimum salary if they're lucky, and we with the platform we provide them access to parts, access to quality control courses, access to a software as a service in terms of accounting, and because of all that, they can provide a warranty to the customers. And we have increased eightfold the income for each one of these informal mechanic garages. So those are the type of companies we have invested. And we see ourselves as an ecosystem builder. In Quadrant 32, it is very hard to be just a venture capitalist or a family office. So we wanted to have something much more open. This ecosystem builder concept was born in 2016, 2017. I mean, obviously, governments build ecosystems, but when a company defines itself as an ecosystem builder is fairly new. So you have to bring entrepreneurs, but also I am a member of United Way Worldwide, One Young World, universities. So you bring all that to the ecosystem. You create collisions between companies so that one can learn from the other. And it's a very interesting concept that we're experimenting. Again, going back to, let's call everything an experiment. So today, I would say that I have, for the first time, I feel whole. You know, when in Mesoamerica, we were doing things that were interesting things with impact, very big things. And I had the foundation and doing this alliance, but I always felt that I was doing like, I was like two people. Now with Alejandría and what we're doing with Meso in terms of planets, because now what we want to do is Alejandría is impact around people, and Meso is impact around planet. So I'm spending like 50-50 of my time between people and planet. Alejandría with what I described, Meso evolving to going back to energy, circular economy, conservation, hydrogen, and green hydrogen, things like that, which are more like bigger investments, more infrastructure driven or conservation driven. And Alejandría more around people, as I described earlier stage, more exponential type of solutions. So I feel like for the first time, I guess, in many years, I feel like a very integrated person, and very, very happy, very into what's important is to move the purpose. And I am a strong believer that that's going to create a lot of profit and a lot of good that is going to be reinvested in expanding that purpose. But the energy, for example, in Alejandría, of this saying, I want to build an educated, connected, and empowered society. Everyone wants to be part of it. I mean, I had meetings with very important DFIs for confidential issues I won't mention, but I talk about the traditional Mesoamerica thing and the infra and all that. And then I mentioned Alejandría as something that I'm doing on my own. And they say, no, let's go back to Alejandría. We like that concept. We want to put money into that. We want to put money behind you, because up until now, since it is an experiment, I am using my own capital, but I am ready to open it to other people that want to bring capital and talent to this. And we're thinking of ways to do that are more in the Quadrant 32, using tokens, using, being more creative in terms of how do you.
Luis, I love how the platform looks. Mesoamerica having been a leader in, let's say, all that important revolution of telecommunication for Latin America, that maybe Americans and Europeans can't really understand the difference that it really brought to Latam. And it happened in Brazil, it happened in, I think, in Mexico and every country in Latin America. And infrastructure, and now totally focused on what has become mainstream, which are solutions for the planet. And with Alejandría, you're building kind of if I understand it correctly, the software for that, the infrastructure for that, people, connection, and kind of what will be needed to really scale those solutions, right? So it's really a unique platform and so special. And I think you're building an amazing legacy in such a small country of Costa Rica, right? In a very
actually, we're doing region. This at Latin American level. Yes,
yes, exactly. It's true.
We have investments from Mexico to Chile,
exactly,
including Brazil. So I was born in Costa Rica, but I consider myself.
That's kind of the hook for my last question, because, as you know, a lot of YPOers that are impact driven, and that is our audience here, will soon be going to Costa Rica, because we have the Global Impact Summit of YPO happening in Costa Rica in the beginning of February. And as a final question, because we have run out of time, what is so special about Costa Rica? Why is Costa Rica so unique? You being this great leader of Costa Rica, and larger than Costa Rica, larger than Latin American probably today, but having been born Costa Rican, why is it so special? Why is it such a pioneer in sustainability? I mean, Costa Rica has been leading that globally for many years, right? And I think every Latin American country is a lagger compared to Costa Rica. So why this small country in Central America is so special? And what is so special about that small country?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to answer that question, if you allow me, with a link of what I believe we need to do more of today. I strongly believe that if we're going to do impact and move to that, we need conscious leaders. And conscious leaders are ones that understand that you're part of a system, that understand that you have to focus on what you're good at and also bring the best out of others. You need to understand that you need to be healthy. You need to understand that you have to be present. You need to understand that you need to have amazing relationships, and you need to understand that you are part of something much bigger and that you should have some sort of purpose. Okay? That to me describes a conscious leader. And somehow, Costa Rica, very early on, I guess it was a very small country with no gold, almost no gold. When the colonial times came, there were no slaves because there were almost no Indian population. So people had small pieces of land. They had to cultivate the land. And somehow, after the independence, our first president was not a military guy, was an educator. And I believe that because of that, things evolved in terms of consciousness of what we could do for the country, I guess. And that has created a country that even though it's so small, it's just 5 million people, in terms of the light that it provides to the world, in terms of ideas. I mean, this first president, back in 1850, started the first school for girls. So this whole concept of girls needed to be educated back in 1850. Yeah. Gives you this idea. Education being free for all was in 1869.
Wow. I think that started in Europe like in 1890s or something like that.
Yeah. So that to me is amazing. And then
so your answer is it was created by a conscious leader, and the conscious leader kind of shaped it into greatness?
I believe so. I believe that if you work on creating conscious leaders, and I think if we spend all of our time making sure that we create as much possible conscious leaders, I think that has such an exponential, powerful possibility of really changing things. Because then we had another conscious leader in the 1950s, Mr. Figueres, that decided, why do we need an army? Back in 1950, he dissolved the army, and he was a military guy. He had won a revolution. We're talking in the middle of Latin America, military coups, dictatorships. I mean, we're talking the 40s. Yeah. With all the problems that we had during those times, he decided to eliminate the army and embracing peace, not as a destination, but as an intention. And then in the 70s, also Mr. Figueres decided we need to protect the planet, and we started this program of national parks, protected areas, and also this concept of paying a big tax for oil. This was later on, more in the 90s, in order to reverse deforestation. And Costa Rica has been the only country in the world that has reversed deforestation. It had gone down to 29% of the covered land in terms of wood, in terms of forest, sorry, back to 56% of coverage. And because of that, we won this Earthshot prize from the British Crown. So very interesting to see a country that is so small that can change things that now is, to me, are obvious. Protecting the planet, promoting equality of opportunities for women, peace as an intention. Those to me are as a Costa Rican, are very obvious things. But for the rest of the planet, maybe not. And somehow I strongly believe it's because you have strong leaders that are conscious that can really create this effect on the rest.
Awesome. And I think that says a lot about YPO's mission, right? To this impact platform to help the 35,000 leaders become better leaders. That's I think is the biggest opportunity that we have here, and it's great to have your legacy, your story, inspiring all those YPOers to become better leaders, because that's really our biggest shot to legacy. And you should get more involved. You should be more of a leader inside YPO and shaping YPOers. So
More than happy to do so. More than happy to do so. And I do believe that YPOers are amazing leaders. And as we move in this ladder of consciousness, I think we have a common language around the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that we can use that to really understand what we are all doing and how we're doing it. Yeah. Because impact investing is one side of it, but this whole concept of how do I use the force of our companies and our connections to really focus on making amazing changes in the world. The world needs us. Again, we're guardians of humanity, and the privilege of being a YPOer in Quadrant 32, it is something that we cannot go to waste. It cannot go to waste. True. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope that it was interesting. I am more than happy to.
It was amazing.
Part of this program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you for everybody that listened to us and to heard this story. Feel free to share, to comment, and thank you once again, Luis. Looking forward to being in Costa Rica in a couple of weeks, and we'll let you know how everything went down there.
Thank you. I hope that I know that you're gonna have a great time in Costa Rica. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I had another issue with my family at the same time, but I know that you're gonna love Costa Rica and have an amazing time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.